Today we will talk about friction. What's the meaning of friction? Let's see. When a car moves on a road, there will be a touch between this car tires and the road, as you see in this image. When this car moves front, there is a friction between the tires of this car and the road. This touch make force. This force called friction. So if I ask you, the friction force appears in which time? When the solid objects like the tire of this car touch another surface. So we can say this touch between each two objects is a type of force known as friction force. What is the definition of the friction force? Look at this ball. If I roll along this ball on the floor, this ball will move and move, and after some time this ball will slow down and stop. Why this ball is stopping? Because there is a force arise between the surface of this ball and the surface of the floor. This force called friction force. So the friction force, it's a force between two surface in contact or in touch. So those surfaces should be in contact or in touch. This force acts in the opposite direction of the motion, and this force causes object to slow down and stop. There are different types of friction. We will talk about the three types of friction in this lesson. Number one, friction between solid objects. As we said before, the friction between the ball and the floor, and the friction between the tire of wheels and the road. Number two, friction between objects and air. Friction between objects and air. When somebody jumps from the aeroplane, this body or this man or this person will fall down very fast. But if this man opens the parachute, what will happen? There is a friction force will arise between the surface of this parachute and the air. This friction force will point to opposite direction of the movement. So this friction force between the surface of the parachute and the air will push this man up in the opposite direction of the gravity. Number three, friction between objects and water. If you swim in the water, or if there is a boat or ship will move on the beach or the sea, what will happen? There is a friction force arise between the surface of the ship and the water, and of course the direction of this friction force will be in the opposite direction of the motion, or the opposite direction of the movement. Firstly, we will talk about the friction force between solid objects. As we said, between the ball and the floor. And look at this image. This man pushed this box front, and the friction force will arise between the surface of this box and the surface of the floor. This friction force will point to the opposite direction of the motion. Also, there are many activities we can do it. For example, I can roll along ball on the floor. If you ride a bike, also you will observe there is a friction between the tire of the bike and the floor or the road. Now, if I take a small rubber ball and I will roll it on a sandy floor firstly, on a sandy floor of the playground. The rubber ball will stop moving after a short time. Why? Because this surface is rough. That means the rough surface increase the friction force, so the ball will stop moving after some time, after short time. In the next situation, I will take this rubber ball and roll it on smooth floor of the classroom, for example. We will observe that the rubber ball stops moving after a long time. Can you give me reason? Yes, that's because the surface of the classroom or the floor of the classroom is very smooth. So the friction force will reduce or decrease. When the car toy touch a wooden board, the friction force will arise. We will talk about this activity inshallah in the next video.